Washington's got some big-time recruiting battles it's going to be fighting in 2025, but the biggest one is not Dijon Lee.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. I'm the site editor over with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. And this episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. And you can check them all out today at nissanusa.com. And Lars, but before we get into today's show, we want to give a shout out to one of our very wonderful everydayers, SoCal Salty, as he's known on Twitter or X, whose mom passed away, and he's got a GoFundMe going around. And he's a wonderful guy, listens to our show every single day, is always super positive, just a really fun follow all around. We want to say that our condolences to him and his family, and we truly hope that everything is going well for him. And with that being said, we do have a lot to get into on today's show. The biggest thing being, I said it off the top. I don't think that Washington's biggest recruiting battle is going to be five-star cornerback Dijon Lee. I think that it'll be with Josiah Sharma, one-time Washington commit, the defensive tackle from Folsom High School in California. And Lars, let me tell you why. I think that Washington is going to be involved for a lot of high-profile defensive backs. I don't think that Josiah Sharma, when Washington's recruiting class is all said and done, and I wrote about this a little bit over on Huskies Wire, I don't think that Josiah Sharma is going to be the highest ranked commit in this class, but Lars, Josiah Sharma is ranked number 36 on 247 Sports defensive lineman, defensive tackle rankings for the class of 2025. Can you tell me where the next highest player west of Texas is ranked behind Sharma, just overall?
300 or 400?
79. So
okay.
Just defensive tackles, yeah.
Just defensive. Okay, then I would have probably said 120. Then I would have said 120 to be clear, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of overall talent, to your point, there is a little bit more of a gap behind Josiah Sharma from the next truly legitimate developable West Coast defensive line, or interior defensive line.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing, where we'll talk about Matai Tagoa'i, who is going to be a fantastic prospect, who's going to have a lot of nice suitors. We know Dijon Lee has a lot of really high profile suitors. Chris Lawson, who, as we talked about the other day, got his official visit finalized to UW. You could say the same thing about Adonyss Currie, about Darryus Dixon, who's somebody we think could be interested. John Mills, the highly touted offensive lineman, who's going to be taking an official visit. But Josiah Sharma, there is a huge gap between him and the next closest defensive tackle. And it's no slight to whoever some of these other players are that have offers from Washington along the West Coast. But with that being said, that just makes securing Josiah Sharma that much more important, because you can step out of your comfort zone and go find a Josiah Hammond in Oklahoma, who I know I really like. I know you like him a lot too. But he's a little bit more under the radar, and it's not necessarily as easy to go scour the country. And the perfect example are Armand and Javon Parker, who the previous coaching staff did a fantastic job identifying them, bringing them in, but that's because they already had a relationship with Courtney Morgan. It was easy enough to say, hey, yeah, these are some under the radar dudes who we really like. But, it's not saying this coaching staff doesn't have those relationships. It's just really difficult to go out and find and bring those players in on a consistent basis. So you want to make sure, especially at a position like that, which is going to be so important in the Big Ten, that you can go and pull in some premier talent that is also, not necessarily too hard to go acquire. Like, it's not, you don't have to go all the way down to Florida or Alabama to find these kinds of kids.
Right. See, and so that's I'm glad you ended it kind of by saying that way, because to your point, I agree. There's nothing I can argue in terms of that being one of, if not the biggest recruiting battles, because of the position and things like that. But my other biggest battle would be the one with Anquon Fegans, right? Because you're going up against Clemson and Georgia. You're going into the Big Ten. Basically, if you have a top three of Washington, Clemson, and Georgia, like, how many guys can you put? And no disrespect to Josiah Sharma, but how many three-star linemen from the West Coast has Washington gone after in years past, and then other big schools come after in, let's say, June, July, maybe early August, and when their senior season starts to pick up? So for me, it's like it's a kind of a catch-22, right? Because your point is 100% valid, right? There's nobody on the West Coast from an interior defensive lineman perspective. But the biggest one from a national perspective, like there's something to be said about when you're all the way up in Seattle and you're beating out Clemson and Georgia. Again, this is a hypothetical, right? But this is why I have the Anquon Fegans one as the biggest recruiting battle, just because of the marquee level of it, right? Kind of almost the opposite argument of yours, right? Where you're still talking about two talented players, but if you could kind of not bookend the class, because they're obviously two different positions, one being a safety and one being an interior defensive lineman. But if you can bookend a really highly coveted, under the radar interior defensive lineman that you kept on the West Coast while plucking one of the top 100 players in the country from Alabama, that to me, like those are two significant, and neither of them, to your point, are Dijon Lee, right? Because when you look at the defensive back room, it's like, okay, there's plenty of cornerbacks to choose from. But when you go back to safety, we've talked about Matai Tagoa'i, but maybe he's more of a linebacker safety. How do they view him, right? So that if you view Tagoa'i as a safety, okay, and you take him and you don't get Fegans, okay, you can accept that.
That's acceptable, yeah.
But in terms of, for me, we talked about Jedd Fisch saying we want to have the best recruiting class in UW history. The only way really to do that, you can keep Josiah Sharma as a 3 or even 4-star defensive lineman, but go get me a top 100 player from the East Coast. Go get me a top 100 player from the South. I mean, Curly Reed, they did it under Kalen DeBoer. Now again, Curly Reed wasn't a top 100 player, but a 4-star out of Louisiana. So significant talent coming up. Fegans can really kind of take the defense to that next level, especially with Vinny Sunseri and the defensive staff.
So I like all the points you made there. And I feel like it's only necessary, just with everything we just said, to talk about Dijon Lee here for a moment. Because Dijon Lee is still the most important recruit in the class. And that's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We wanted to make sure we started this with other positions too, because when you look at Dijon Lee, John Richardson has done a fantastic job continuing the relationship that was built up with the previous staff here. And of course, the previous staff still has a good relationship with him down at Alabama. And it's something where, especially when we look at what the May 31st weekend has turned into now, with Raiden Vinesbright coming that weekend, Dijon Lee, Matai Tagoa'i all coming that same weekend, and now adding Chris Lawson to that as well. It seems to be that is the tier 1 of targets for this staff. And of course, Anquon Fegans is coming at the end of June. And whenever he's on campus, that's of course going to be an A1 target as well. But it's really fun to see the way this class is shaped up. And it's really interesting to be able to talk about multiple top 100 kids. And it's fun and it's exciting because we haven't seen that from Washington in such a long time. And even, one of the guys we talked about as we were prepping for the show is Trent McDuffie. Trent McDuffie is probably the last, and Laiatu Latu, but it's same class, right? Where you go back and look at that. That was the last time we were talking about multiple top 100 kids being super interested in Washington because the JT Tuimoloau. We kind of knew that was never really going to happen. Emeka Egbuka, same thing. And then there was Sam Heward. Sam Heward was a top 100 kid, but there was nobody else going along with that. And, Troy Franklin, that was what it was. But that was the last time we were able to say that. And then everything fell by the wayside. But the way everything looks right now, we're not saying Washington's the leader for any of these guys because we can't know that right now. But looking at what these battles have turned into is really interesting. And what it all really points back to is exactly what you said, Lars, is that this could end up being one of the best classes in UW history if Jedd Fisch and his staff are able to reel in just a couple of these guys.
Exactly. I think that's the key that we're mentioning, where they don't have to get all these guys. And by the way, nobody's getting all of these guys, right? No school is going to get all these 4-stars. But in terms of the talent distribution, you're probably needing to get 4 or 5 at minimum on offense, maybe 4 or 5 on defense. So that way you can balance it out.
I'd say 6 or 7 on defense. You got to go big on defense.
I'm just saying, just in a general philosophy, plus or minus 2 or 3, depending on the class. But when you're talking about consistently developing those guys as well, it's not just having a one-off year where, like the JT Tuimoloau class, you could have got all those guys, but there was no sustainable success behind them. This class, it seems like really 25 is building the 26. 26 will build the 27. They'll just keep building on top of each other, and that's all you can ask for as a fan.
And speaking of building, let's talk about the quarterbacks. right after for a message from our friends over at Nissan. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. And you know what? We got to talk about the Utah State Aggies because they are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us with a powerful performance against New Mexico, giving them their first outright Mountain West title in program history. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Aggies have done here. And hey, maybe Danny Sprinkle will be on his way to Montlake soon. You never know. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. And you can do all that at shop.nissanusa.com. So, Lars, ESPN's Adam Rittenberg is somebody I know you and I both really like his work, really like everything he does. He started doing college future power rankings, and he did the quarterbacks first. You know, and it's not like quarterback's an important position or anything like that, but he decided to start at quarterback, and he put Washington at number 22, which feels a little bit on the low end for what they have in the room, but I also really understand and respect that ranking because behind Will Rogers, because he's talking more about the future than he is 2024. Behind Will Rogers, there are two high-end 4-star guys in Darryus Davis and Damon Williams. So I like where he's going with that. I think he might have, gotten away with putting them a little bit higher, but I like where Adam has them slotted at first, and it's just, both these guys are really exciting prospects.
Right. I mean, I think again, kind of we're a little bit slanted and say we could talk more. We could talk them up more because we've either watched their tape more or just cover their recruitment or things like that. But when you look at the depth, to your point, you have basically a one-off in Will Rogers, and then you have two freshmen who, whether they play this year or not, it's still going to be in 25 that they're actually going to separate. Right. So you're not going to, and neither of them, no disrespect to Damon Williams or Darryus Davis, but neither of them are the Sam Heward, to be fair, wasn't either, but it's like the quintessential 5-star that comes in, the DJ Uiagalelei, the Trevor Lawrence. So they're not those guys. And that's, by the way, that's not a slight. Like, that's one in very few people that are actually like that. But the point of, I think, having them in the top 25 to say, hey, look, they actually have a pretty decent quarterback. It's unproven, but there's a lot to like about the position moving forward. And when I got to talk to Damon last weekend, you could kind of sense that, where he's a kid who he's going to have a little bit of that Austin Mack. Not in the sense of holding the ball too long, but he's going to play a little bit quicker than Austin did, I think, as a true freshman, just in practice and things like that. Just the way that he seems to kind of understand Jedd's scheme, I think he's going to have a slight leg up. But because they're both freshmen and you have a fifth year in Will Rogers coming in to likely be the starter, I would imagine that 22, 23, they're probably 15 by next year. Because because I would imagine they'll get some game time this year. You would at least expect in a couple of those early games, right?
Yeah, in the Weber State, Eastern Mish, something like that. Yeah,
just to get their feet wet with the pace of college football, right? You're not gonna now again and that's also because if, let's say, Will Rogers gets hurt, you don't want it, but just in case somebody has to go down, somebody's got to go in, and so you at least need to have confidence that you can execute the offense. And that's one thing I don't have an issue with either of these two guys. They're very confident quarterbacks. When I talk to Damon, he knows how to find the end zone. So, but I think it's now you know how to find the end zone in high school. How can you develop, and how quickly can you develop to understand that in college? Because for every Johnny Manziel that can wow you, but maybe it's not what it should be, I think Jedd Fisch will develop the quarterbacks correctly to make sure, hey, we're going to use your explosiveness, but we want you to also be a pocket quarterback, a guy that is a throw-first guy. Not a pocket guy, but a throw-first quarterback versus just, I got the ball in my hand. Now I'm going to try and be RG3 and Johnny Manziel.
I got to make a play.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, because, again, that's where you get into dangerous territory of, okay, you can make plays, but it's very rare, especially early on, that a freshman or even a redshirt freshman is going to not make more mistakes than not.
So I like everything you're saying there. I wanted to kind of go in a different direction with this, where I want to talk about just kind of some of the differences in the room, where for a long time we saw that after the Keith Price era is probably where we saw that really take a turn into a lot of the pocket passer, just pro style, air quotes, kind of quarterback, if you will, of Jake Browning to Jacob Eason, I was forgetting a name in there somewhere, to Dylan Morris, to Michael Penix, where Mike's a good athlete. Mike's the best athlete in the bunch, but they were all as you said, throw first. I'm going to stand in there and I'm going to deliver the ball and not necessarily look to, and you never want to look to go off platform, but when you're forced to go off platform, is your first instinct going to be to throw the ball away or to be to tuck it and run and make a play? Where all those guys did that at times, but it was never really a consistent part of the offense. And that's something that both Damon provides. That's something that Dermaricus provides. It's something that Dash Beerley, the commit in the class of 2025 that goes to modern day now, provides. And it's something that when you look at some of the tape from some of the 2026 guys, that's something they'll do as well from some of the early offers that we've seen, like 5-star Brady Smigel, who's going to be visiting it at some point over the next couple of months, where that's something that all those dudes do. It's become a much bigger part of their game. It's something that Jedd Fisch talked about in his signing day press conference, said, yeah, of course, we never want somebody to go off platform, but he talked about his time with Matthew Stafford and saying, when they do go off platform, they make it look really pretty. They make it look nice. And that's something that all these guys can do. And because there were certain times where, and it's no slight to Dylan Morris, because you could say it for all these guys, Jake Browning especially, where when we watched Dylan Morris in 2021 have to go off platform, he didn't necessarily have an idea of, okay, this is what you should do. This is what you should do. Like when we saw Jake Browning drop back 30 yards and then just kind of chuck the ball up in the air against Utah. Everybody who watched that game knows what I'm talking about. But that's not something that these guys will do. They'll say, all right, that's not there. That's not there. I'm going to tuck it. I'm going to run. I'm going to pick up 6, 7, 8 yards because that's just the way the NFL is going. That's the way the college game has been going for a while. And it's nice to see Jedd Fisch say, this is something that we need to do with this program.
Exactly. And I think the other thing to consider also, I remember talking to Ryan Grubb about it, where there's certain kind of offenses are designed around, hey, look, we need you just to get the ball out quickly, just to be almost a point guard, right? And I think what's clear from Jedd's scheme is, I mean, you'll know this when he had Cam Newton in New England, where it's like he's coached so many different types of quarterbacks, whether the success level in the past, take it what it is. But when you get the chance to coach several different types of quarterbacks, and then in the NFL, and then you come back to the college level and say, okay, I want a pocket passer like Will Rogers, and I want a couple guys that maybe can kind of get a little more creative down the line. But to start out, I want a guy that at least I know for a fact can throw the ball, will actually try and get the ball out quickly and not just look to make a play on his own. But I do think having that dynamic of all three is important because long-term, Jedd knows the era of college football is going into not a spread wide open offense, but the quarterback's got to be a little bit more mobile than what Peyton Manning used to be able to do. So unless again, short of Michael Penix's precision passing, right? If Mike wasn't as precise as a passer, he wouldn't get away with a lot of the stuff that he did, right? But because he was able to throw guys open, which rarely quarterbacks actually can do, like on a consistent pass basis, but having that different level of quarterback or different type of quarterback, to your point, will, I think, help this offense become what Jedd wants it to be sooner. Because look at Noah Fafita at Arizona, right? Where comes in, maybe a quote-unquote pocket passer, throw first guy, but hey, I want you to use your legs. And he supplanted Jane DeLora, who is more of a running quarterback, right? So it doesn't mean, hey, you have to be able to always run. I just need you to be able to gain more yardage positively. And honestly, you remember Jake Browning when he would do the spin around, you drop back 5 yards, spin back 3 more yards, and then go into it's. I want somebody that spins forward, or at least at the very minimum, just dives forward. If the pocket collapses, just give me a yard or two, or just throw it away. Right, just one of those two.
Step
do not
up.
Take negative plays. Yeah, do not take negative plays.
Right, and that was something that Jacob Eason did a lot too, which was always really frustrating to see. It, yeah. just the look on your face. Yeah, that was always just insanely frustrating to watch. And that's something where when you look at both of the guys that are in the room right now, it's going to be fun watching them work with Jedd Fisch, where, we're still a couple weeks out from the beginning of spring practice, but that's going to be one of the things that I'm really intrigued to watch, where it's, okay, what are Damon and Dermaricus doing? Are they throwing on the run a lot? Are we seeing them do a lot of different scramble drills and just, find an open guy downfield or tuck it and run? And it's not a knock on Ryan Grubb, because each coach is going to do things a little bit differently, where what Ryan Grubb would always say was a throwaway is okay. A throwaway is all right in our offense. That's fine. We'll live for the next down, which is absolutely correct. But that was something where he also did that to a certain extent to make sure that Michael Penix was protected, to make sure that he wasn't getting hurt, to make sure his guy was always out there. And that's something you want to do with every quarterback. Again, That's why I'm saying it's not a knock. But when you have a guy who, and you never want to make a comp to a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen, but they don't have that fear of getting hurt. When they're just saying, all right, we're going to tuck it and run. We're okay with that. We're going to go pick up those extra yards because we know it's something our team needs. That hasn't necessarily been the biggest part of this offense, like I said. And getting that moving forward is going to be really fun. So I want to see what that's going to look like between Jedd Fisch and Jimmy Doherty, the quarterback's coach, what those guys are going to be doing to make sure that they can put Demarcus Davis and Damon Williams especially in the best place to succeed moving forward. And Lars, with that being said, we're going to have to switch gears a little bit because it is officially the end of the Mike Hopkins era. And we're going to get to that right after a message from our friends over at Fire TV, because Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug it into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, from March Madness to the NBA to the MLB and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well, and so much more. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. And to learn more, you can do that at Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. And we also got to give a shout out to our good friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience will bring us home the winning trophies. Also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. For all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Whew, that was a lot of talking. But you know, we don't have to talk about Mike Hopkins anymore, so I feel like that's the best segue I can make there. And Lars, we just watched Washington lose 80-74 to USC in the Pac-12 tournament, and all I can say is that was the most quintessential Mike Hopkins game I have ever watched.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, there's so much that's symbolic of it. There's so much of it that's, you know. And again, we don't want to rip 18 to 23-year-old players, right? That's not what we're here to do, right? We're not here to cook kids. But at the same point, we could cook the coaches that brought the kids in and put them together, because it's.
And we're not knocking for bringing the kids in. This is a talented team,
right? And that's the thing. But it gets back to what I said on yesterday's show or the day before, where you look at the final stats where Paul Mulcahy is not. Corey Johnson comes off the bench and just pops off, but for 17 points and three three-pointers. But Paul Mulcahy, 11 minutes, 0 for 3, no points, 1 rebound. It's like, okay, you're bringing all these veterans in, but then whatever reason, every now and then it's just not coming together. Keon doesn't have his best game, right? But again, Keon was carrying
for the field in the second half.
But Keon's carrying the team the entire season. I mean, it's that whole like,
yeah.
Well, it's like when you're carrying the world on your shoulders, at some point that thing is going to break. They did have, Moses Wood comes in with some threes and things like that. But it was just a case of, I mean, again, it's like going to LA Fitness and just having a 5-on-5 game. Like, hey, let's just see who can just kind of get on a hot streak the most. It's like, hey, right, this guy can shoot. He used to be a former walk-on. He's used to this. And then we got 3 guys from high school. It's like, okay, like you got some pieces there, but playing together and actually, playing a full 40 minutes, it just never was something that they could truly do together. And even when they could, it was against teams that they had no business hanging around. And,
yeah. First of all, I got to say, shout out to 425 Fitness. I didn't have my best morning shooting, so I just want to put that out there. So thanks for rubbing that in on me a little bit. I appreciate that. I see how it is. But no, where I really wanted to go with this is you talk about Moses Wood. Moses Wood was excellent in the first half. Puts up 14 points. Does a tremendous job with the buzzer beater right before halftime too. It's okay, yeah. You watch that first half and you say, all right, yeah, the offense has not been the problem this season. They've always found a way to score. They found a way to do that, and are you going to be able to couple that with some defensive stops? And then you get out there real quickly, and in the second half, you say, no, this isn't going to happen. It's not going to work. And that's where it's frustrating because that's what the issue has been all season. We even saw them go back to the 2-3 zone there for a while, which also just didn't work. And it makes 9 straight losses to USC for this Husky basketball team. And it feels like a really fitting end to the Mike Hopkins era because there were those scoreless chunks. As as much as we give credit to the offense, there's still that period where they always fall silent because it happens every time. And just there were no stops made on the defensive side towards the end of the game. It just felt like USC was able to do whatever they want. I give a lot of credit to Boogie Ellis, man. That dude can play. I really like watching him. But it felt like from everything we've seen over, especially the last 5 seasons of Mike Hopkins' tenure at Washington, it was all just knowing that he was gone whenever they were out. It just all really came to a head tonight. And it was just, yeah, this is the way for him to go out, just the same way that these last 5 seasons have gone.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because again, it was Hopkins' fault for some of those years, but again, at some point he didn't get the right help, but again, as the head coach, it falls on you, right? So, and I'm not excusing Hopkins or anything like that, but the silver lining here is when Wilhelm Breitenbach and Bronny James had the same number of points at the end of the game. So that's so yeah, just electric all around here. But again, to your point, you look at Braxton Mia didn't really do anything tonight, and when you go into a 2-3 zone, like the caveat with that whole operation was okay, if Braxton thrives in the zone like he did last year, that Hopkins kept preaching on, when they went to it this year, that success was not there, and you can't tell me all of a sudden a guy that used to be super comfortable in a system now can't get back to being super comfortable in that system with the coaches that he's had the last 2 years. I mean, to me, it's a coach problem. It's somewhat a roster development and personnel problem, but it was time. And again, not for Jimmy Lake, this probably happened 2 years ago or 3 years or maybe a year ago at least. And so, Hopkins, again, kind of got the benefit of the doubt, tried to make it work. And here's the thing to consider with Danny Sprinkle, not even just Danny Sprinkle in general.
No, please, yeah.
But moving forward, where it ain't for a lack of resources. It ain't for a lack of, hey, we got to develop a bunch of 3-star in-state guys and hope for the best. There was significant NIL capital is what I'm allowed to say is it's a significant NIL capital was invested in this team.
Yep.
And they finished 2 games above 500.
Right. And that's the frustrating thing.
It would have been real quick. It would have been like if Washington in football finished 9-3 or 10-2 this year with the roster and investment that they had. I know it sounds different, but that would have been a major letdown from what's the investment. That's what I'm saying.
That's a great way to put it because the goal for the football team was to come back and win a national championship. And you're right on the point of the NIL where probably as what we're allowed to say is yes, there was a lot invested into this team, which is obvious. When you look at bringing in Paul Mulcahy, when you look at bringing in Severe Wheeler, when you look at probably getting Keon Brooks to stay and getting Moses Wood and getting some of these guys, that's not in the world of what college basketball and just college sports now and as a whole is really, it's not cheap. So, and that's probably a big reason why Hopkins was able to come back. It was, all right, we're putting this team around to see if you can be successful with it. And then obviously the answer was no. So it's well past his time to be out. Of course, it took a little longer than some people would have liked, but it's officially over now.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of one of those, it couldn't happen to a better person because Hopkins is such a nice person. And I think that's kind of also what helped, like, okay, look, we get that he's a nice guy, but it's become apathetic. You can't just like, oh, he's a nice guy and this and that. at some point you got to produce and win. I mean, if Kalen DeBoer was the nicest guy, but he went 6-5, it'd be the same discussion where it's, hey buddy, we like you, we do, but you gotta win. It's a result-oriented business. I mean, look at some of the more prominent coaches that people hate. I mean, Dan Hurley, John, people that nobody likes, but they're winning. That's the point. Yep. If you win, nothing really matters. You can say whatever you want. But now it's on Troy Dannon to use the experience of, hey, the next coach, you clearly have NIL here for you. Can you use it better than the last guy did? I have a feeling they can, but again, it could also not work with certain coaches. So it's college football is a very unique beast because you got 12 guys. That's really 7 guys.
College basketball, you mean?
What did I say? College football? Yeah.
College football.
Basketball. Yeah. College basketball, they're both a different beast, but college basketball is a real unique beast because you only have really 7 guys to roll with, 5 on a consistent starting basis, probably 3 or 4 or 5 depth guys. But you have to year in and year out create a new roster. Whereas football, you do, but you at least can develop a few more guys. Basketball, it's like, hey, you might need to bring in 7 or 8 new guys next year, and year in and year out keep doing that. And so it's a tough job. It's a tough gig, but Washington basketball deserves better than what it had over the past 4 years.
That's the perfect place to end it right there. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. Please make sure you stay tuned and stay subscribed and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we've got so much fun content coming your way throughout the rest of this offseason. You're not going to want to miss it. Seriously. Just some of the things that Lars and I were talking about right before we hit record. We can't say anything yet, but you're going to want to make sure you're tuned in for all that. And with that being said, please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you hit that bell so you never miss when we post a new video. Please make sure you leave a like on the video. Leave us a comment down below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Friday.